HR has really evolved to be a strategic function. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the change in the industry and one of the demands in the industry, right? The role of HR is also changing with AI. So we could talk about tools and how tools impact companies. But one, employees can be more productive, and the leaders who really embrace AI and think of internal AI adoption as one of their charters is, I think, going to succeed in the new world. But you said this at the very beginning. People were the number one asset, but they're also like 70-80% of the cost. I say less spreadsheets, more strategy, right? Like what
Yeah, I love
humans
that.
enjoy and are
Man,
good
that
at.
needs to be a T-shirt.
That needs to be a t-shirt.
You need to put that on a T-shirt and just put your brand on it. That would sell like yeah, that would go off the shelf quickly. Welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am your host, Trent Cotton, and today I've got someone that I've met twice, once at a dinner here in Atlanta, and then again at Transform in Vegas. God, it seems like forever ago, but I'd like to welcome the CEO of Candor. Oh, Lord, let's try that again. I swear. I don't know why. Anytime I'm traveling, I just need to mark off the next day because I cannot get it right. All right. Welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am your host, Trent Cotton, and today I've actually got the CEO of Candor IQ. I've had the opportunity to meet him at dinner and then also at Transform. So, Harris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to spend time in real life and now on your pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background?
So Harris, founder CEO of Candor IQ. We do compensation planning and headcount planning, kind of all rolled into one, integrated with the rest of your HR stack. But that's not where I started. Before this, I was the head of product engineering at Checker, at Blend, at Salesforce, and
Oh,
so I've been in the technology space and I've led very large teams. And part of the backstory of Candor IQ is having managed those teams. I'm sure we'll unpack some of that together, but that's my work history. But also, I'm an immigrant to the U.S., moved here 20 years ago. Maybe if a happy hour, maybe my accent will kick in a little bit more. But yes, live in San Francisco with wife, 2 kids. It's great.
nice, nice. And interesting fact is that you enjoy performing stand up.
Yeah, I was not that great at it. That's why I became a software CEO because I realized my swim lane was not that. I was drowning. So
That's
yes.
hilarious. And you said that you spoke 4 languages. What languages are those?
So I can speak English, I can speak Arabic, Hindi, Urdu, and then I know a little bit of Thai as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, Meshi, let's move on. Or what is it? Meshi yala in Arabic,
There
right?
you go, Mesh. Yeah, there we go.
Yes. Yeah. I keep up that with my in-laws. I pick up on a couple of words that whenever they're all talking in Arabic. So, well,
That's
what I
funny.
like to do is I always like to get inside people's brain. I define human capital as being the evolved form of HR, and it looks at how do we unlock the ROI and manage the largest expense in the organization, and that's through its people. So you have a really unique point of view kind of coming into the HR tech and looking across the industry. How do you see the world of human capital changing over the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with human capital, I kind of maybe want to start with the definition. I like your definition, and I want to like maybe add to it. So HR of the '70s is very very different, where it was very tactical, onboard person, etc., offboard person, run payroll. That is not the job of the people teams, the HR teams anymore. HR has really evolved to be a strategic function. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the change in the industry and one of the demands in the industry, right? Like people teams and the CHROs, they're a strategic partner, just like the CFO is, just like the
Hmm.
COO is, just like the CRO is. And so like that's evolved a lot, right? Like what the HR team needs to do and own to be successful has changed, is continuing to change. And there's a generation of people leaders that's kind of much more business savvy and business centric. And yes, people is the lens through which the HR team operates. The same way finance and accounting is the lens through which the CFO operates. Ultimately, the goal is to help businesses succeed, grow, create the right environment for people to come in and thrive. Of course, there's a lot we can unpack, but
Oh, totally.
that's a very big change, I think.
It's funny that you bring that up because whenever I got into HR, I actually came from the line of business. And at the time, I was an anomaly. I was the only one that had actually hired and managed the people that we were recruiting for. And now, I'm seeing such an influx of people that said, "Yeah, I worked in product, or I worked in finance, or I worked in sales, and I got into HR." And I've seen a nice evolution as a result of that because I think HR kind of got in its own little chamber, its echo chamber, and now we're starting to
Yeah.
see that permeate out a little bit more. And I think to the benefit of our industry.
100%. I think the HR teams of 2025 have to be good with spreadsheets. I'm playing to the stereotypes here a little bit.
Hmm.
They have to know like the business metrics, tying business to people. They have to be able to run numbers. They have to be strategic. They have to be able to like look around the corners and kind of help make decisions. That's what happens when the companies hire too fast or too slow. I mean, a lot of it might be the executive team in general, or founders or VCs if it's a venture backed company, kind of pushing for that. But I think the HR roles is evolved a lot, and
Hmm.
so the skills required to be successful long term have changed. And I think the mindset required to be successful, or at least rise to the ranks and be an HR executive, is changed as well.
That makes complete sense. What are some of the AI trends that you're watching?
Yeah, so on the AI front, right? So I mean, we were both at Transform, and that was probably
Yeah,
the number one topic that
it
people were
was.
talking about. Uh, what I'll say is like I don't think people have necessarily figured it out, and I know we're gonna unpack some of the things that are working now. But I'll say a few things. One is the role of HR is also changing with AI. So we could talk about tools and how tools impact companies. But one,
Hmm.
employees can be more productive, right? Like with Cursor, like engineers can code
Yeah.
faster, like your sales tools or marketing tools. So, HR is in the business of workforce management, right? And strategy and productivity and motivation, all those things. Like there's a lot more there, like skills and competencies required. So one, I think the role of HR is changing too, where HR teams need to think about internal AI tools, internal adoption, and what that means. What's the productivity? What are the right ratios? Like, do you still need a
Hmm.
span of control of 1 to 5, or can it be 1 to 10 now? Like, do you need less middle management? Do you need different kinds of marketers if, like, you can do some of it? Because, like, if you're doing a lot of content creation, like, do you need fewer people? What are the right skills you need? Is it
Hmm.
being better at AI prompts? Is it like it's the skills required of the people is changing. So what the competencies, what the career ladders are, what the KPIs of internal employees. So HR's role is changing, is going to change immensely, and the leaders who really embrace AI and think of internal AI adoption as one of their charters, um, is, I think, going to succeed in the new world.
So, I'm going to give you a kind of a two-part question. So, for your product, what problem were you trying to solve, and then intertwined in that, how are you leveraging AI in your product cycle?
Yeah, great question. So maybe to like level set on what we do first, and we'll talk about AI in our space. So we do compensation management, from benchmarking to total reward statements to analytics to workflows like the compensation cycle, merit cycle, headcount planning, like request approvals, budget planning, org design, et cetera, kind of all tied to your comp
All the
data.
fun stuff.
Your Yeah, all the fun stuff. So like with Candor IQ, all financial decisions around your people, and you said this at the very beginning, people were the number one asset, but they're also like 70-80% of the
Hmm.
costs. There's no holistic way to think about that. at least with any tools out there, they do bits and pieces, right? There's org chart tools, there's a benchmarking data solution, there's a people analytics tool, there's finance tools, and you want a single view of your budget, your workforce, your compensation, your performance, like tenure, all of that, to make those decisions across the employee lifecycle, whether it's unlocking a new headcount or giving an offer to a candidate or promoting an employee or giving them a merit boost, right? You kind of need to triangulate a lot of data. And so we bring it together. We're not the payroll
Mhm.
system. We're not the ATS. We integrate with 100 HRISs, HCMs, payrolls, applicant tracking, cap table, performance management, like all the major kind of HR providers, because we want all the signals in our system to be able to then downstream, and the benchmarking data, of course, to be able to then make these decisions downstream, whether it's the merit cycle or like a new headcount request. So that's what Candor IQ does.
Okay.
And as you can see, data is already a really big part of what we do,
Yeah.
right? Unlocking that data and integrating to these different systems. So with AI, there's a crawl, walk, run. Like we can talk about kind of roadmap and where the future is headed to. But right
Yeah.
now, what we do is we've created like an HR business partner agent, a compensation analyst agent. So people, like AI agents that can answer questions across this data. So if Trent is unhappy about his pay and asking for more money, instead of an HR business partner having to go do all this research and stitch together data from different sheets, you can ask our agent and it'll give you the answer. Trent's pay is here. This is his compa ratio. This is how he's doing versus his peers. This is performance score. The last time he made a change, right? It's in real time. It's pulling all of that together. Or if that's at an individual level, or if you're
Hmm.
looking at pay fairness, like find me all the people, all the employees in the sales department that are below their pay range, and break down by maybe gender or race or country or whatever it might be, and we can help you do that. We take it a step further. So we, like I'm talking with a comp analyst agent, we can help you do a lot of the calculations and math that you would do in a spreadsheet. So we're not only are we giving you the information, right? So it's not just like a chat GPT that's taking information and sharing it.
Right.
It certainly does that too. But we can say, here's all the people you need to change. And if you adjust them to the minimum or the mid of their pay bands, it's going to cost you, $482,000 to do that, make that change. And here's a spreadsheet. You can export it out and send it to your CFO, for instance. So we're helping you do calculations as well. Those are the kind of the areas we're focused on, and just being able to answer more and more questions across the life cycle of an employee. So that's where we're focused on right now.
And it's interesting because I was at an event yesterday, and one of the questions was about succession planning. It was a group of TA leaders, and I guess most of them kind of felt like they were being forced to be reactive because it's like, oh, there's this workforce plan, and then here's all these requisitions, and they were like, how do we get to the top of that pyramid of that discussion to be able to influence that? And I think that how what you've described is actually the way to do it. And that's what I told them yesterday. I said you gotta lead with the data, but so many of them don't even know where to gather the data. It sounds like you kind of put all of that in a nice, easy agent world that you can just go, hey, pull this, pull this, pull this, and you can actually go and speak educated, right, with the CFO about this is what we need to do.
Definitely, Trent. So that's definitely one piece of it, is like being able to have all of this data handy. And the thing is, all of the data is in your different HR tools. They're just
Yes.
not connected, right? And
Right.
so it's really painful. It's like, where the gold nugget is, but you have to dig through a mountain to get to
Hmm.
it. And this really changes the game there. The other thing I would say, to your point, I think, and I'm going to pull in this thread, is for for the TA teams, they have to be in the process at the right time.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, if you think about like an applicant tracking system, that's already too late for a TA leader, because that means the job rec has been approved and unlocked, and now you're going to hire. Recruiting is like sales, and you need lead time, and you need to like get the
Yep.
JD out and like go pursue people, and it's a pipeline, and it takes time, and the organization expects you to, as soon as JD's out, you have like 30 candidates or something, and
Oh
you're
yeah.
interviewing the next day. That's
Yeah.
not how it
Hired.
works. Yeah, exactly. At least not for great candidates, for sure. That's
No.
not how it works. So the TA team needs to be plugged into the process earlier too. So that's one of the gaps that we noticed, and we have capabilities around whether you're using a tool or not. Like having the TA team be aware of like your annual like headcount plans and being plugged in
Hmm.
at the time of the plan, right? So if your fiscal year is January, like in October, November, as the finance leader and the other leaders are putting that together, having the TA team be plugged in is important so they know, like, even if it's not the headcount plan changes monthly or quarterly, just having a sense of how many people we're hiring, what skills, what location, what level of seniority, etc. That visibility is incredibly helpful, and then as those
Hmm.
plans change, making it much more multiplayer, I think, is important, because that information is then locked in a FP&A tool or a spreadsheet, and
Hmm.
uh, raising awareness around it, having the right process, sometimes the right tools, so that the TA team knows, okay, this month, these are the 5 headcount that are approved to go higher. At least then they have lead time, and they know, which headcount's coming the month after too, even if it's not approved, so they can at least prep for it, right, and plan
No, that
ahead.
makes sense. Now,
Um,
do you have the option for, like in sales, some if a position is vacant, then there is a cost of revenue that you can almost do by day. Does your system kind of get to that granular level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, not yet. I think that's a phenomenal opportunity for us, and something that we'll probably address later this year is kind of the right kind of ratios, right? Some are like internal ratios, like revenue per employee or revenue per salesperson, or
Hmm.
etc. Um, and kind of having companies see the numbers that matter to them. But
Hmm.
then also, I think there's opportunity for us to provide guidance on, depending on the type of company you are and the stage and the size
Yeah,
and the industry, like what are best practices as well. And AI can play a role there too, in terms of like providing recommendations.
absolutely.
Right, like, hey, your revenue to sales ratio is like 1.2 million to one account executive, and in the space we see it being 1.5, like, and at least it's an input, and so we can provide recommendation guidance through AI as well,
Yeah.
and flag it. So yeah, then it's a great idea. um
And I love the benchmarking aspect of it because I think compensation, um, most of those departments they use benchmarking, but there's not a lot of benchmarking on other critical KPIs within HR. So case in point, 1.8 internally versus 1.5. It means that our salespeople that we have are a little bit better at closing the deals. So that's the bar that we need to go and hire to. But for me as a HR leader, I would also be advising my TA team, be careful because we're at 1.8. That's our average. The average in the market's 1.5. So you're going to have to dig a lot more to be able to bring out those people that are going to be able to perform at just the average for us. I mean, think about the approach to your TA strategy there. I love that. What other benchmarking aspects of KPIs do you offer within the program or platform? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like, as you mentioned, like, other than like market benchmarking around like pay and also trends and where things are headed, like, how machine learning engineering salaries transpired over the last 1 year or 2 years, and so like over time
Hmm.
analytics as well. But then there's many other things, like, cost numbers, cost to
Hmm.
employee ratio, like fully loaded versus based, or things like equity granted and average equity granted, and how much percent of option pools left or and used this year. Span of control, like depth of org charts, like there's a lot of different reporting, pay. But
Hmm.
I guess in terms of like buckets, like there's like some around pay fairness and pay equity. There's some around just regular, like, pay versus performance, financial metrics like the cost and the equity burn and those things as well. Some organizational metrics like span of control and depth of organization. um, those are some of the types of analytics we provide. But the other interesting thing is, like, with our AI agent, like people analytics is changing too, in the sense that
Mm,
in the past, you had to build like hundreds of charts and dashboards and whatever was relevant for you. At the big companies would use a Tableau or Salesforce, and the mid-sized companies might use a Vizier, at least for people analytics. And now, like the way we think about it is, yes, we'll have like out of the box reports on things that you care about that you see every day, that we can alert you on, but you should be able to ask any long tail of questions that come to mind in a format that you want. I think that's
mhm.
magic, because one day your people leader and your CEO's in a meeting asking you like, hey, give me this exact slice, like give me like pay versus performance versus tenure. Like that that math is pretty hard. But
Yeah.
like with the AI agent, if you don't have that chart built, that's fine. It'll just give you the answer, because it doesn't, like I think that's going to change a lot too. So that's how we're thinking about it.
And it's interesting to me because I think, in the world that you're playing, agentic AI has the most upswing because it's almost like your external brain where there's so many times that I have sat and sit in an executive meeting and they'll ask a question. I'm like, okay, let me go and pull those three different data points, do some quick analysis, and I'll have an answer for you. It'd be awesome to go, hang on a second, and just go and ping my little agent, and it gives me like real time data. I think that's going to be a huge lift for kind of the human capitalist going forward, and it actually helps them get into that advisory type of role that most HR professionals that I talk to are passionate. They want to get into that advisory, but they can't get out of the muck, of the process and the analysis.
Yeah, I say less spreadsheets, more strategy, right? Like what
Yeah, I love
humans
that.
enjoy and are
Man,
good
that
at.
needs to be a t-shirt. You need
That
to
needs
you
to be a
need
t-shirt.
you need to put that on a t-shirt and just put your brand on it. That would sell like yeah, that would go off the shelf quickly. I know I'd have one.
That's funny. But that's how I think about it, is like exactly what you said, Trent. People, like HR leaders don't want to spend all their days in spreadsheets and massaging data
Mhm,
and pulling information from different places. They want to be more strategic, as we've talked about. They want to be human centric. They want to drive, better employee experience, better
mhm,
candidate experiences, handle things that are nuanced, that require the human touch. They want to, like drive culture. They want to drive business results. They want to, all of those things. And so if you can take away some of the tedious manual work, then it frees up a lot of that time to actually do the high value stuff, the things that humans are
mhm.
good at and naturally enjoy.
And quite frankly, the things that the company is actually paying that position to do, not chase down data and do all of that. So
Totally. And the
I
data and the spreadsheets are a means to an end. Absolutely. It's,
oh yeah,
it's an input to get to the output. And if you can get to the output faster, then why not? Then you can scale yourself up as well and do a lot more.
man, you're speaking my love language. It's why I love AI. That's the thing that I've just fallen in love with is okay. Well, why am I spending time doing this whenever I know that I can build something in AI that will actually help me and probably do it better. Especially in the analysis part. One of my favorite questions in a prompt whenever I'm doing data or whenever I'm building an agent, I always put in there something along the lines of tell me a trend that I am not seeing and did not ask about. And to me, it's
That's a great
fascinating some of the
question.
stuff that comes out. And I have lost countless hours of my life going and chasing that data rabbit hole, going, okay, well, why is this particular generation gap affecting this over here? Is that something that we
Yeah.
can change? And then equating it, but I mean, my minor statistics and finance. So I mean, I love numbers. I love kind of getting into it, but AI has definitely opened up a lot of avenues to hopefully, for a lot of us be able to become that advisor. What because I mean you and I are, of course are AI junkies, but what are some specific AI driven tools or strategies that HR departments can start to use to increase employee experience?
Yeah, that's a great one. So obviously Candor IQ can help too, because we're not just a tool for HR. One of the problems is like a lot of these workforce decisions are multiplayer. You want the manager, hiring manager, the department leader, the finance team, the CEO involved, etc. So we build a lot for folks beyond the people team, because ultimately the people problems are company problems.
Hmm.
And but beyond ourselves, there's a lot of cool ones out there. Like I really like Glean. They do an awesome job of internal knowledge management. And so like
Okay.
some degree is automating work that HR and IT teams do. Like, hey, what does my equity look like? What's our the HR policy? What's our
Yeah.
travel? And all the information is out there. Even if you document it, it's in a wiki or it's in a PDF or some page. People just can't seem to find this information. So even that's a simple use case, but some of these like AI's kind of search tools are doing a pretty nice job, because we all know Google Drive doesn't work, or Microsoft SharePoint definitely doesn't work.
It does not.
Um, so I'm excited about that. And there's a lot more there. But in learning and development, in like job description creation, so like across the stack, like being able to maybe feed it like, hey, this is what we want to, we're hiring a new role. This is what we want to do. It comes, like spitting out the JD for you. I think that's super cool. Um, so I think there's some interesting stuff that's happening on the recruiting side with AI as well, like like call recordings and automatic call scheduling and stuff that's like making the candidate experience better, that's making the recruiter experience better. And the recruiting coordination is not necessarily a fun job, and so like playing Tetris, it can kind of do that really quickly.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that at the top of the funnel, like on the hiring side. I don't think AI has really penetrated like the roles of a HR business partner or people ops or like as deeply yet. I think there's a lot of good young companies out there that are doing interesting things, but
Hmm.
certainly, and I know even the incumbents like Workdays and the ADPs and are doing some work. I don't think it's. I don't think we have like all the magical solutions out there that they're going to make impact. I'll say, like, on performance management, there's some pretty neat stuff there, because it's really speeding up the process of writing performance reviews.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe that's one good use case at the employees experience side of things, but more like, let's say, the manager side of things than the employee necessarily. So I think there's a lot more opportunity. I think we're really scratching the surface. But Trent, I don't know if you've seen or heard anything that you were transformed to, like any cool use cases that you saw that you're like, hey man, if this scales up, this would be a game changer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends, but I was surprised at the number of booths that I went to. And, I asked them a very specific question: how are you leveraging AI in your product? There were some that answered it fantastically, like came right out and said, this is the problem we're trying to solve, and here's how we're leveraging AI. And some of the bigger ones, though, which is what was surprising to me, they would go in and they would show, and I'm going, that's ChatGPT. So, like, why would I pay an extra $30,000 or $40,000 a year
Yeah,
for you to integrate ChatGPT when I can just have it on the side doing the same exact thing? So, I guess word of caution for anyone listening that's considering getting some HR tech: really dig in and ask the question, how are you leveraging AI? Is it agentic, or is it just kind of simple traditional AI that I can get from Gemini, Claude, or something else for a fraction of the cost? For me, I kind of talked about a utopia of, HR. I think by 2030 is going to be 50% human, 50% agentic, and that 50% human is going, part of their job is managing those agents and really kind of making sure that they're able to dig in where they need to, but also stay at that strategy aspect. Like you said, stop with the spreadsheets and start with a strategy. So that's what I'm really excited about. I think performance review is probably, it is really needing some AI work there. There was a company, I think they sold hyper contacts. Brennan, can't remember the CEO's name, but he was one of the few vendors. Whenever he and I spoke, I asked him the question, same question I ask every vendor: what problem are you trying to solve? And his
yeah,
answer had me hooked. He goes, 101s are broken. Review process is long, laborious, and it suffers from recency bias. What if I could told you I could connect, automate, and put in some AI that would make all of that better? I said, you don't have to tell me anything about the product, man. Sold. Take my visa
yeah.
now. Um, but I do think that that's a space, because it's, most performance stuff is just done kind of half-ass. I mean, if we're being completely honest, it's like, check this off. It's not really a good conversation. But I
That's
think
true.
having an agent in there that could go in and, let's say you're my manager, And we have our one-on-ones, and you document it, and I add some notes to it, and an AI can go back and look and say, hey, you know, you charged Trent in January to learn this skill. We're doing the review in October for the year. He's made some progress, but not completely there. Put him at a 3 and cite this from your one-on-ones. To me, that's going to be so much more impactful of a one-on-one and accurate than probably what's being done now. So,
Yeah, and I this is how we do it at Candor IQ, by the way. And this is my personal ethos around this. Like, I don't like the annual or semi-annual performance review. I think performance reviews are done at that frequency because of the fact that it's such a huge lift. I think performance
uh-huh.
reviews need to be like continuous or near continuous. Like every one-on-one, there's a little bit of it. It's like micro dosing, or like every
Microdosing.
and
I love that
microdosing
term.
feedback, like or monthly at least.
Uh-huh.
I think it's really broken. Because you don't want to just like have a 6 month session and then like have a long list of feedback and like to give it to
Uh-huh.
your teammate. Like people don't absorb it well, people can't action it well. It's a lot of heavy lifting to do, like put together and then track, and no one feels good about it, even if you like do well. I just think it's wrong. I think like
Yeah.
performance reviews should be, at least between the managers, should be like much higher frequency, and you're giving feedback on a continuous basis. And yes, it's good to have checkpoints and have KPIs and all of that. And I think like AI can really help there, because you can like put together feedback. The AI can even suggest like, hey, based off your last conversation, like maybe record the call and like here's the KPIs, and like and help measure the like versus those KPIs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like I think performance management tools need to be really rebuilt from the ground up to do these workflows and have the analytics. I think that would be the end state of where I'd want performance management to go. And we do that at Candor IQ, but it's certainly very manual right now. It's our
Uh-huh.
culturally, that's how we've like set the stage, and people love it because they're like, hey, there's no like, hey, big, like, we want what twice a year, like here's all the things that we need to work on. It's people like can take action immediately. We're a young company, like you need to take action quickly too, so it's aligned to business goals. um it just really changes, like the downstream impact of doing it differently is
Uh-huh.
so big. Our culture is different. Our culture accepts it. The people we hire are different. Our nimbleness has changed. Our ability to course correct has changed. It's it's hard to overstate the impact of just that.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a little mental ninja now going over in my head of kind of doing some self-reflection, going, maybe I need to change the review process and do it a lot more often. You got me thinking. I love that. And that's why I love having these kind of conversations. I was kind of hesitant to do a whole podcast, and then now I'm kind of at the point where, like, I don't care if anybody watches it. I have fantastic conversations with people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me and always leave me thinking, and I know I'm better for it, so I appreciate that. I'm going to be thinking about that all weekend now, just really kind of doing some self-reflection. So needed, but appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, right? That's the magic of AI, but right. So I mean, you need the right tools to support that, because if you have to
mhm,
do all of this manually, Trent, it's a little bit harder. Even without AI, we're smaller, so we can do some of this. It's
mhm.
okay, but at scale, that's where the right tools, that's where the AI comes in, just to kind of bring it full circle. Because if you can do it more quickly, if managers can do it more quickly, effectively, like the pre-planning and the post-tracking and all of that, yeah, I think you need to
Makes
find the right
sense.
tools.
Yeah. Now let's flip that. I mean, we've obviously gone all in and really excited about where AI could do HR some great, give us some good lifts. Where do you think? What are some potential drawbacks of AI in HR?
Oh, so many. So let's leave. One is garbage in, garbage out. Okay, so
Oh God, yes.
AI is only as good as the data. And to your point around like a lot of these big companies, they're just like lipstick on a pig, Chat GPT
Yep.
wrappers. There's many reasons why those things don't work. I don't have the adoptions. Like you need to have all the right data, whether it's internal company data or through your tools or external data. That's one. And so if you have to your question on risk, if you have the wrong data, you're not giving the right recommendations, and the AI doesn't even know that it's giving the wrong recommendations. That's super dangerous. Like, even if you tell the AI, hey, what's the percentage confidence level, but if the AI doesn't know that you should factor in performance scores to your compensation strategy,
Right.
then it's just going to say like, hey, everyone's in their pay range, this is the answer, our confidence score is 99%. So
Hmm.
like, AI is, like a child. Like, if you don't know what's out there, what's necessary, like, what the scope of the world is, like, you're making decisions in a finite box, and so like that can lead to a lot of wrong answers. That's one. Number two, on the data side too, if you're training your models on Reddit, there's definitely, like, the outputs are going to be bad, right? So it's
Right.
in the people space, it's much more about like closed loop system. Yes, you can train a lot on public data, but you kind of need to train on like closed data as well, because that's where a lot
Hmm.
of the gold is. Like, you were talking about, like, some of the KPIs that we should be surfacing, and do you want to, if you average out the internet and you have a span of control number, of 1 to 4, because that's what the average company in America does. Is that what you want to do as like a modern
Right.
company? Like, it's kind of bringing you to the mean, instead of like what the best in class is. So there's that as well. There's hallucinations. People talk about that AI can have hallucinations. Um, there can be unfairness, like, especially now in our space, like pay bias and unfairness. The internet, if you index the internet and tell the AI that that's the right answer, there's a lot of demographics that are going to continue to be underpaid, because
Hmm.
that's what the historical data is saying, and
Right.
so that's, which is very dangerous. So you have to know those things.
Yeah, and connect all of your data. It never ceases to amaze me whenever kind of working in and scoping a project. You'll ask the HR person, okay, I know HRIS, I know applicant tracking system, I know payroll and total benefits. What other data do you have? That's it.
Mhm.
Okay, well, do you have survey data? Yeah. All right, well, let's put that in there. Do you have performance data? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put that in there. And you go and you build something, and they go and they ask the bot or the agent to perform some kind of a task, and like it's broken. It's not broken. You didn't give it the data it needed to perform the task. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so it's not just garbage in, garbage out, but make sure that there's at least something for it to ingest to be able to do the work.
that's true.
And I mean, as frustrating as it is, it's kind of on me that I didn't ask all the right questions, kind of setting everything up. But how? So I'm an HR person. I'm out there. I've got the dumpster fire that's in front of me. What
Mhm.
what advice would you give me on how to stay up to date on what's going on in the world of AI, its impact on the workforce, and everything else that's kind of hitting us from a news cycle?
Yeah, I think that's great. What you're right, Trent. There's a lot of noise, and there's, and in this space, so you have to pick and choose, obviously, because you're busy, and like, there's, as you said, there's a lot of fires you have to deal with, and
Oh yeah,
sensitive things to manage too. I will say, like, mind's what, keep an open mind, and then test and try stuff too. Like, I think it's like going back to school. There's a new tool in the world out there. There's a new language. There's a new tool. You need to
yeah,
learn how to do it. Like, in the '90s when the internet came online, or it like HR probably had this, like, every function the same. Like, hey, do I learn how to use the internet, or like dial up, or do I learn how to use the mobile device, and do I like, ultimately, you have to be on the right side of the trends, right? And so
right,
retooling yourself is important. The people who didn't got left behind, unfortunately, right? Like, that's the
yeah,
when big, like, these big waves happen, like, it's a tectonic shift. And so I don't think there's any excuse necessarily not to do it if you want to stay in the workforce and be productive, because you know I think Satya Nadella from Microsoft was saying, like, the real measure of AI is, like, does your GDP as a country or increase? Does that ultimately, which means, does your productivity as a country increase? And I certainly believe so. So, like, your expectations, your productivity, like, those things will change. So you need to
mhm,
carve the time to do it. I think there's a lot of, really, in this space at least, there's a lot of good learning by doing. And so, like, experiment with ChatGPT. I see a lot of people leaders building out, like, these little lightweight tools. One of them I was talking to, Transform. She's doing consulting work, and she's leveraging AI to put together all the skills and competencies. And it's not that she didn't do the work. It would have taken her several days to a week to put that together. She did it in a
Mm-hmm.
day. Technically, she could have turned around and turn it around in an hour, but she's like, "Hey, I did the research. I got all the information. I still did the work, the human work of making it make sense for this organization. But instead of a 5-day project, it was a 1-day project. Like that's an example of leveraging AI in the field for your job and tying it to the there's jobs to be done framework, like your jobs to be done, and
Right.
leveraging experimenting. And I think she was saying the first time she did it, it took her the same amount of time for a different project because she had to rewrite everything, but she got much better at the prompt. She could train her
Yep.
own model. And I think you kind of need to invest there as a tool. The other thing I'll say, at least for people leaders and HR teams within their organization, not just themselves, is the way I kind of suggest adopting AI in organizations is like software engineering
Okay.
methodology, so like agile, like
Mm-hmm.
in engineering and software development, you never say that that's a perfect output. It's not like a box CD, like here's your Adobe Photoshop. Now there's no updates. Like software is a continuous development and improvement process, and certainly is AI adoption as well. So having that agile mindset, telling your employees like, hey, we're leveraging AI. Some things might be worse, some things might be better. We need to learn and figure, like train and optimize and tweak and accept it. Like come with that mindset and describe it to you. Make sure the company's on board with that, and that we're going to do this iteratively. It's not going to be perfect answers, but know that we have the right goals of serving you better, creating better employee experience, creating better candidate experience, driving more productivity, achieving business goals, whatever it might be. But it won't be all perfect, and it's going to like have that agile software development mindset with adopting AI. So that's the other thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that I love that. I'm a huge proponent of agile. And when you were talking, kind of going back to when you were talking about the performance review, that was the first thing that I kind of went back to. Is like, why am I not doing this iteratively? That's like counterintuitive to my entire thought process. So that's whenever I told you I was like mentally kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, you're
kicking that
connecting the
around.
dots, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, I've applied agile to recruiting. I've applied it to our projects and our methodologies in HR. Why have I not done it in performance? So maybe that can be a little side project you and I work on is how to put some agile methodology around the AI improved performance space. It might be a new business case
That
there.
sounds fun.
Yeah. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. So, what is a book that changed your perspective on HR or business?
That's a good one. I mean, on the business side, I'll say like I read Ben Horowitz, The Hard Things About Hard Things. That changed
Mm,
my perspective a little bit more as I was, going from working for someone else, like in leadership roles, to like being a founder, and I had to reprogram myself in many ways to be effective at my new job. So that was very informative. Um, High output management's a really good one. That's oldie
high output.
from
Huh.
the what's his name, the founder of Intel, the CEO, former CEO of Intel from the 80s. That
Andy.
yeah, yep. Andy,
God, what
uh,
is this? I can see
I
his
know.
face.
I'm
Oh my
forgetting the
gosh.
last name. That's great. On the HR book side, to be honest, and maybe I'm not, classically trained in HR, so I didn't read some of
I'm not
those
either.
books you would, but I kind of much more prefer the podcasts and the blog posts and like the more newer content, because again, at least my generically, a lot of the HR, how HR was done in the 80s and 90s doesn't work that well anymore. And so I actually think it's very dated. A lot of the content there is like historic kind of like legacy. You read it
Oh yeah.
as an academic exercise, but that's not how you should be practicing. So I go seek like who are the thought leaders, like who are the people who are collecting all this information like you, and like figuring out the best practices. Like I think there's a lot more learning. Hopefully that'll be institutionalized. I know there's lots of great programs out there for people like in schools as well, like for people now that like there's a lot of great HR practitioners that come out of Cornell, for example, but it's not I don't think it's a standard
No, and you actually answered the next question that I usually ask, which is, what are some podcasts that you like to listen to just to stay abreast of everything, and not necessarily HR, but just kind of what tickles your brain in your free time.
Yeah, well, yeah, with two kids and a startup, not less free time, but when I have any brain cells left to tickle, I like the Modern People Leader
Okay.
podcast. For example, it's really good to hear like different people leaders and how they think, and like what they're doing and applying. So I find that to be helpful. I listen to some of these like what's the one Andy Bartlett, Logan Bartlett. It's like a
Hmm.
venture capital podcast, but they interview a lot of founders and executives, and they don't just talk about the venture side of things, but how to scale these businesses and what worked and what didn't work.
Cool.
Um, so those are two good ones.
Awesome. And where can people find out more about you and engage with you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a very open individual, so people can find me on LinkedIn. It's Haris Ikram, Haris, one R, so easy to search in LinkedIn, even though LinkedIn search doesn't work well. So Haris Ikram, or HIKRAM at candoriq.com. You can also go to our website, candoriq.com, and reach out there, and it'll come back to me too. So email, LinkedIn are certainly good ways to find me.
Fantastic. Well, how about a mic drop moment? What is one piece of advice you'd leave the audience?
Yeah, one piece of I think we had a lot of good topics, but if you're doing a mic drop, I think the world is changing from, at least tech is changing from software as a service to service as software.
Mm.
And I think it's a good encapsulation of a lot of what we talked about, especially with AI, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's the most exciting. It's scary, yes, but it's the most exciting time. But I think like embracing it is the future.
Sounds good. Well, Harris, thank you so much for hopping on. I know it's a busy life as a founder, so I appreciate you squeezing out a little bit of time and educating me and getting me thinking about things. And I'm quite sure the audience feels the same.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Talk soon.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Human Capitalist. This channel is all about community, so comment, subscribe, and join the conversation. This is Trent Cotton, your human capitalist, signing off. Remember, invest in yourself, own your potential, and keep building your own human capital. I'll see you next time.